there has been an ongoing investigation into how HYBE, Big Hit, turned into an IPO, like a public company, like how that progression happened. And adding to this messy situation is the voice of a former person who worked at Big Hit and HYBE, I think mainly just Big Hit at the time, who recently just said that she was speaking her truth and said that she was kind of inspired by the latest ongoing stock investigations to speak her mind. And if you do believe that she is not being prodded by somebody else to somebody else's benefit over at the Western Court, the Southern Court, and the Court of the Hallway, then she is literally, you can understand, like, on the one hand, if I believe her, I can totally understand like how, somebody who gets fired and they think that they were unjustly fired and that they were screwed out of a promise for stock options and working so hard and giving it your all and then just being discarded and wanting to just talk your truth whenever you feel like it. I think that's totally legitimate. However, there are aspects of her situation that also make me be cautious, and there are some red flags. Now, this person was the director of communication during Big Hit and BTS. She entered the company in April 2016 and left January 2018. So that was a year and 10 months. Not a very long amount of time. If you do include 1 year of her doing freelance work for Big Hit after she left in January 2018, that takes her to December 2018. So that's 2 years and 10 months. And she came right before BTS launched their second full album. Of course, they started in 2013, BTS did, and they released one full album and then several mini albums. And then in the fall of 2016, they released a second album and they became like a really big hit. And so she has been complaining about two main points, two big points, and it seems, I have to say, it sounds like Mini Jin, okay? Like, they might not be, and they're totally different. However, this person also praised Mini Jin's Hyundai card speech in the fall. She said that they never met, but had they met while they were both working at Big Hit, they would have gotten along, she thought, and she felt really bad for Mini Jin's legal situation and how much it was costing her. And she also said that it was something that Mini Jin said during the speech that she gave to the Hyundai crowd audience, which, remember, we saw it. You can also look at my old videos on it. I thought it was just a disaster, but she was inspired. She said that it was really nice to hear her say that, you really, like Mini Jin was saying, you really have to remember why you're doing this job, and that really impacted her. So why you're doing this job. I'm sure there was probably a little bit more to that metaphor, like probably a deeper meaning, but y'all, you better know why you're doing your job. She also said that she related to this feeling of, Mini Jin being fired after they've used their skills because they've become disliked. She thought that was awful. And then she said the worst thing that she heard when she was at Big Hit was that she was told, you must be like a tongue in the mouth, always under control. That was the most disgusting thing I ever heard while working at Big Hit. She was the director of communications, and I think that was a pretty reasonable ask, saying like, you have to like be in control of your tongue. You must be in control of how you communicate out there, because your words are going to affect the company and, entire, BTS. So unless it was a different way. And so this is why I felt like it was so like New Jeans hallway coded and Mini Jin coded, like something that was maybe an issue-ish or not that big of an issue, like trying to make it bigger than it is. So she posted on Threads and she said, "Truly evil. This is the hidden story behind the process of being promoted to an executive, something even I didn't know." She complained about how it was normal to receive work instructions through Kakao Talk or phone calls in the middle of the night. She used to sleep with her phone next to her at all times. She lost over 7 kilograms during the time she was at the company, and she experienced symptoms of hair loss. She poured her heart into her work, taking care of the company's male idols, the sons of others, rather than her own precious children. Again, this children metaphor comes up very like Mini Jin coded, and sort of like I'm doing all the work for somebody else's benefit or their progeny instead of my own. Also, not to because I also, relate to, this bad working environments, stressful working environments, working you to the bone. Totally unfair. However, I'm a little bit surprised that she would say this, especially at this level and and a Korean company. I would guarantee you that most people at any conglomerate in Korea have to do all of these things. And even, when I was working in America, people were doing this as well. Yes, you sleep with your phone. Yes, you answer the calls on the weekends. Yes, you're losing your hair. And actually, I mean, not to disparage if it was a health problem or not, but you're lucky if you're losing weight instead of gaining weight because of all of the stress. This is just, I think, a normal thing. And I think this is why it also doesn't resonate, because people who are not even like, big wig executives are doing these things to survive at work. Should it change? Of course. Should it get better? Yes. Should we be talking about it? Yes. However, it doesn't seem like this would be enough of a reason, because it's somewhat of an accepted norm and a reason for her to then call the company so evil, like it's doing so evil. Now, the next thing that she said is that the company dismissed her but forced her into a resignation because she no longer suited their preferences. And then she started complaining about like how other people who barely was there from the beginning of BigHIT and BTS were handed huge stock options in like the tens of millions of dollars without any real contribution, and how that was so unfair. She also wanted to mention, because she got backlash from the BTS army, and she said that, I'm not disparaging the BTS members from getting their stock options and, being successful. She just wanted to mention this. She also said that I will fight to the end quietly according to the law. So it hasn't been clear what kind of legal action she would take, if any. And then she also mentioned that, the people who later swooped in and got all these stock options, they're the ones who played golf with corporate cards, lounged in luxury rooms, and drank alcohol. They're the real evil ones. That sounds exactly like the way Mini Jin was complaining about all of the kejoshi. Remember kejoshi, ajashi, all the guys that were in the office that she hated, but she had no problem, according, on another side of her story, or the way that it's been revealed in her Kakao Talk, she had no problem, doing body lobby, and not just as a hobby with these men, even at work. Then she brought out something just very weird and convoluted. Even if I 100% believe her, I don't even think this is that big of an issue. And then she's trying to make it into some issue. And I think there must be some sort of underlying agenda of either appealing or repelling to the Democratic Party. But in any event, she was just trying to paint Si-hyuk as a creep. And she said that I had to work on the weekend before the presidential elections. And this was in 2017 when we also had our snap election because President Park Geun-hye got impeached. And she said that she went and had lunch near the ate kalguksu. Here's kalguksu coming up again. Girl groups and kalguksu, not a good thing for Si-hyuk. So then they were at a restaurant eating kalguksu, and he was trying to convince her, she said, to vote for Moon Jae-in, and he was passionate about it. And then even at one point, touched her hand and pleaded with her to vote for Moon Jae-in, the Democratic Party candidate, and basically the referendum vote against Park Geun-hye. Now, I don't know if this was that creepy, and and this is just from her side and how she is telling the story. So whether you want to believe she's being totally honest in the representation, or if she's doing a little bit of the hallway fiction writing class on it, to me, it seems like it's stretching a little bit. And I've certainly been in conversations where somebody is just like, come on, or hey, don't you it's I mean, these days, I think people have to be a lot more careful with that kind of, conversational thing. But that's a common thing for a lot of times, especially when you're trying to convince people. And I don't think it's that, kind of a creepy thing. It could be creepy, definitely, and also at the same time convincing, what if he was just talking about politics, and then one of these things oh my god, yeah, this is totally how I feel, and yeah, of course you gotta vote for this person, not like he was trying to make her vote a certain way in order to keep her job. So that's where I think they're testing the waters to see whether they can get away with that kind of a statement, oh, he even tried to direct my political choices in order to keep my job. That's where the mini Jin thing would, push it off the cliff and, and see if it can fly. But I don't think it's really getting much of a pickup if it is a media play, and me just even trying to explain it clearer is probably better media play than what they're doing. So we have no real hard evidence from her. And she says apparently she has a voice recording of something. But yeah, the big thing is that it's trying to coincide into this investigation into the IPO. Whether Bang Si-hyuk, BigHIT, HYBE, people misled people about the IPO. And this is where I think, okay, if you don't believe Bang Si-hyuk and you think he's evil and manipulative and greedy, then what they're trying to see, or if it's true, what they're trying to investigate or prove, because somebody is accusing Bang Si-hyuk of essentially grabbing shares back that he promised. So when he was at BigHIT, telling people, I know y'all working for starvation wages, but it'll all be worth it once we, sell the company on the stock market or get an investment, I'm going to give you a part of the company, and then, boom, if it turns into a big hit, then we're going to all be rich. But before that happened, what he's being accused of is basically being oh, we're not going to really have an IPO, even though he really wants to have an IPO, but he wants to get some of the shares back that he promised. That's the accusation. And then how he did that was yeah, I know, I gave you those shares and you bought it for $1 each, $1 a share. That's what he, gave it to them at. And if you want to sell it for $30 a share, you can sell it to this private equity fund and they'll give you the money right away. So you don't have to wait for an IPO. Because even if they got it at $1 a share, some of these people got 50,000 shares to 200,000 shares. So that's still $50,000 to $200,000. So, if you had that money, then it would be tied up. If you didn't have that money and you had to borrow the money to buy the shares during the window you had to buy it and then wait for the IPO, you might not be able to keep waiting. So, while you're paying it off like a second mortgage. And so that's the accusation, because some people did exit out early. Now, if you believe Si-hyuk's situation had been like, oh my God, he got into like another one of these things where he's being blamed for it not working out perfectly. Now, this is how I can see how he's being unfairly screwed here. Because what had happened was that during that time in like 2019-ish, where there were questions about, are you going to IPO? When are you going to IPO? And Si-hyuk was saying like, there are no plans yet. Now, that's something that you really have to really understand when somebody says that there's no plans yet. That can mean that there's no definite plan right now. So even if he's saying like, I plan to do it, except all the ducks are not in the row, they were still being audited, and there was still an option where he might just take an investment of $1 billion instead of going to the stock market. If he was saying like, yeah, we're going to IPO, but then he decides that, yeah, we're going to finalize the investment, then he would also get in trouble for saying that there was going to be an IPO. So I could see how like he was not going to say it until it was absolutely confirmed. And then he gave an opportunity for some people who just didn't want to wait. And then he's probably tired of these people saying like, come on, dude, get me my IPO, get me my money, because I want to leave, because I've been slaving away here at BigHIT for years and I need to leave, but I need to leave with some money. And so I could see him like doing that, because the IPO happened in October 2020. They were still being audited. And then some people are saying like, well, why are you being audited if you weren't planning on an IPO? Yes, you're planning on an IPO obviously, because in 2016, that's when he started to give the shares out to his best employees and other investors. So already from 2016, he is planning on an IPO. And also there is the question of correct valuation, because it's so difficult, especially with his situation, because there's not a lot of other K-pop, firms. Like, yeah, there are, but on this level, it's hard to set like, okay, what are we going to set this price at? What is this company worth? And a lot of the times you also need the revenue to back up. If you're saying like, we want to go out like, instead of $30 a share, like, and I think what they did was $120 a share, then you got to back it up with revenue. Like, have you made that much money in order for this to happen? And if BTS was just kind of really hitting its groove to like superstardom with a lot of revenue, then you want to wait maybe another year, get those revenues in the books, and then say like, look, this company is like, producing at this level. It's just going to keep going up from here. So that justifies a higher stock price. Otherwise, you have to start out with a lower stock price, and that pisses off everybody who's been waiting because they want more. Now, she was complaining about how she got screwed out of her stock options. She said that she was fired or told to resign and it was involuntary. And then the management said that you haven't spent enough time in the company for your stock options to be valid. And I thought like, oh, that sounds really unfair. Like, I wonder like, what the situation was. So I did a little bit of digging. And the question is really, did she deserve these stock options, do you think, and deserve to be this upset about it? On the one hand, yes, in the sense that it does look like she was promised these shares, but with the condition that she had to be at the company for a certain amount of time for it to vest, and that's just a standard procedure. But this is why I found a very, very big red flag. November 2016 is when BigHIT granted stock options to 5 key early members of the company, and somehow she slid under the category of early. November 2016. Remember I said she entered the company in April 2016? So 6 months later, I don't know how this is possible. 6 months later, after joining the company, she becomes one of the 5 special golden employees who get a ton of shares. 56,000 shares was the allotment that it's reported that she was promised, but she hadn't spent enough time at the company for it to vest. Now, I was just like, wait a minute. And she was saying, like, this is why it seems Minijin coded, because in order to preempt any kind of argument that, like, well, you've only been there for 6 months, like, why are you saying that, you deserved all these shares? And she said, before anybody could say that, because a lot of people aren't even going to do that research, she said, like, well, there's all these people who are, latecomers that did barely any time at the company, and they got millions of dollars worth of shares. All right, so who were the other 4 people? Well, there was the vice president, Chae Yu-jung. She got 160,000 shares. She left in 2020, and I believe she was part of the group that sold her shares off early, and she was there for a very long time. P-Dog, his real name, Kang Kyo-won, got 128,000 shares, and everybody knows that P-Dog is essential for the production of BTS music, and he's been there for a really long time. Former HYBE America head Yoon Seok-jun got 120,000 shares. He joined in 2010. Remember, 2016 is when they started giving these shares out to the earliest people. He was there since 2010. And then the guy who was the head of management, Kim Shin-gyu, with 88,000 shares, was there the longest. 2008 is when he entered the company. So he's been there for 8 years. When did BigHIT start? In Bang Si-hyuk's probably went to the local district office and filed his paperwork to start the company and started on a milk crate and a cardboard box. That was in 2005, okay? 2005. I'd understand if she had entered in 2005, 2008, 2010, maybe even 2013 when BTS officially started and released their first album. But she came in 2016. Bang Si-hyuk, I don't know what kind of situation, like it must be, the Hobby Lobby is working. Because 6 months later, how do you give such a sweetheart deal? Like, please explain. That seems more ridiculous than, having it not work out, at your job. And, somebody who says that they would be a fan of Minijin, that also, like, red flag there. Like, perhaps, if it's a situation of birds of a feather flock together, is it any wonder why, in your own words, you were disliked, or then you didn't meet the preferences of the company? That's literally like not even corporate talk of like, she's not a cultural fit. Why? Because we can't stand working with her. I don't know if that is the case, but that's how it seems to be coded here. Now, should she have been fired? Who knows, like how that situation worked out. Do I have a lot of sympathy for people who get fired? Yes. And do I have a lot of sympathy for people who get unjustly fired? Of course, double and triple. But this does raise some red flags, is how conveniently some of this information has been left out of the storytelling, and it seemed very attacking and strategic, with the timing as well against HYBE and Bang Si-hyuk, and again, raining on the parade of the BTS return. You got a lot of nerve if this isn't like a passionate plea. Yes, you did say that you held your tongue since, what is it, like 2018, 2017, so for 7 or 8 years, for the sake of BTS. But why are you bringing this out now when BTS is returning? Shouldn't you also be with the same heart and mind, be, really caring about BTS's return? Or is there something that happened somewhere in a cookie aisle at an E-Mart where you may have run into somebody's mother who just got a good deal on them jeans. Which is it? All right, guys, in the next video, we'll probably go over some of the updates on where the sexual harassment case has ended up. It's sort of confirmed, sort of done, but it's still now it's in appeals. And so it's a mess there as well. But yes, we have to congratulate RMNV from coming back. Hope they are going to rest up and then just come back strong. What do you guys think? Put your comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.